Aim.
Hey. Aim.
It is burgundy.
Yes.
What were you going to say? Aim what?
No, it's just I. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I want to say, like, I'm aware of feeling. I'm just like, okay, I want to get onto the repair part of our episodes because
Sure.
I'm just aware of the felt sense, and I'm just thinking about, like, for our listeners, like, you're like, oh, okay, thanks, Curt, for the reminder.
Okay, yeah. Let's get to the next.
Yeah, it's great.
I was thinking the same thing, and then Pep said it. I was like, I'm really looking forward to it's pretty clear. There's rupture.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
And it strikes me again how critical the curiosity and having a hospitable group of people around us is to this work. Like, see, the guy that you mentioned that, comes home and yells at his 8-year-old, and then his wife is like, I'm thinking that's coming from somewhere else. And if it is done in a hospitable way, it gives us our best chance to, like, go change our work clothes and think, I'm going to be curious about that.
Totally. Yeah.
And this idea, like, okay, so triggers and grudges stood out to me, and the application. Like, these triggers, like, there's no avoiding them. Like, there are going to be triggers. Whether we're stopped at a stoplight and we notice a restaurant that we're flooded. And so it's like, the work is not to avoid these things. Because that's a lost battle.
And what you said at the beginning, Curt, the work is also not to kill it, but to master it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you shared with me in a personal setting about when these things come up, being able to regulate them, being able to regulate when, because
as best we can.
Dang
moment.
Yeah. But and the point is that they're going to come up. You're probably not going to be able to kill it entirely. I mean, it's yeah.
No. I mean, you could. I just continue to go back to the first 3 chapters of Genesis. There is this sense in which the serpent was a creature that God made.
Right.
It didn't just show up on its own. I mean, it showed up in the garden with its intention on its own, but it didn't just, like, exist on its own. God made this, and there is this sense in which it's a trigger. Right? It comes in. They don't know it's a trigger yet, but they're given one simple task.
Yeah.
Don't eat of this fruit. Don't eat that tree. And it's really tricky. It is really tricky. And I sometimes think that we think that growth and maturity is measured in terms of I never get triggered.
Right.
Maturity.
Hello.
Maturity will be. I will recognize that I'm mature, fully mature, when there is no longer, like, when the snake comes around, I will no longer be afraid of the snake. Like, I will just see the snake and I will, like, this will be great. As opposed to maturity actually being a growth in my capacity to better regulate when I am triggered.
Right. Not when, not if.
Oh, yeah, when I am triggered, right. And because for me, that's a matter of because even if I don't regulate it well enough, if I don't do it perfectly, even that it contributes to the rupture. Because now I'm judging myself for not having, responded to the rupture in the right way, which is just piling on. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the whole grudge thing. Like, Curt, when you said, okay, if there's a grudge, like, if you're holding a grudge, there has been a rupture at some point.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Like in recovery, in the rooms, much of the work is about what is your part. Like, you say this whole liturgy of stuff, and they're like, what's your part? And it's like, are you kidding me? What is my part? But it's like, that's where okay, so then a grudge. Sometimes I'll say I want to say we, but we're not, I'm not even aware of what the rupture was. I just hold on to this grudge, and that could go on forever.
Right.
But then if my part is holding on to it, that is the hope, because then I have to figure out what the grudge is.
Right.
The rupture is, I mean.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think about, so I grew up in this house where we were taught to be, where I was taught to be afraid of being angry.
Uh-huh.
And I was taught to be wary of anybody who's anxious.
Oh my gosh!
Right, so we're all working really hard. My father, who, as we said, right, he's not an angry guy because everybody's working so hard not to piss him off. Right, so this is right. Now he truly wasn't, but you just didn't want to be in the room if you could, there's urban legend of Louis Thompson. You just don't want to mess with him. And at the same time, he's just such a beautiful man. I know this. But but it's also a situation where for all of his giftings and all of his beauty, he and I never had a single substantive conversation. He didn't approach me for anything. There was a lot, neglect would not be the right word. That's too hard a word. But there is a certain sense in which I was missed. There are just certain things that a son needs from his father in particular that I didn't get. And I'm not even aware that there is a rupture that is there that is not grossly toxic, but it is minorly toxic. There is a rupture that takes place that nobody knows. I don't have some sense that my dad knew exactly what he should be doing and chose not to do it. He didn't know. But I didn't also, as an 8-year-old, as a 15-year-old, I wasn't aware that, except that one story I think I've told here before where my mom comes to me and says, well, your dad came to me and wanted to know why it is that you will talk to me about certain things but won't talk to him. And I remember even as a 15-year-old looking at her and saying, do you hear what you're asking? Do you see what's going on here? And she acknowledged that, and nothing ever came of it. There was no conversation between my dad and me about any of these things. And I kind of went on and didn't really think about this. And it wasn't until later in life, literally until just a few years ago, when the last of my 3 brothers who died from cancer passed away, and I'm the only remaining member of my family of origin. And I remember, I may have said this here too before, I remember saying to Phyllis, I became aware within a few weeks, I just became a gathering storm of rage.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, where is this coming from? And, as I came to say, so it turns out there are certain conversations that you can't really have until certain people are dead. Mm-hmm. But you don't know that? You don't know it until, the river just, it comes at flood stage in an hour. This is what will happen with rivers, right? They're just, you gradually see them and then boom, they're just and now they're 6 feet over their banks. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It's a collection of toxic ruptures that were very, very subtle and minor by virtue of things not being said in my family. People are feeling it, people are sensing it, and people are doing all kinds of things to pretend things aren't happening. Nobody would look at my family and think, oh my gosh, there is a cauldron of toxicity in that Thompson family. No one would think this.
Right.
And yet we had our own particular little pot of Giardia growing. Yeah, here, drink this.
Oof.
And, nobody was dying. No, it wasn't killing people. But we were not well.
Yeah.
And so for many of our listeners, I think this is what it's like. If I can't look around and see dead bodies everywhere and see if it's not a war, if I'm not living in Ukraine, then it's not, you can't be that bad.
Right.
And we would want to say, actually, this is part of the lie that evil perpetrates, which is this sense that, if I'm not missing a limb, then I must be healthy.
Right. It's like being pecked to death. It's like you get pecked once. It's like, oh, it's no big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it is a big deal.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'm also just really, I just feel acutely like we're in this season where, in our moment,
culturally,
there's just lots of conversation about, the othering, and the divide between, we kind of call it this. Oh yes, the nation is so divided. Like who are we talking about? Like, can you name names? And if you can think of a name with whom you are divided, like a person within that could be within arm's reach, then go have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, rather I know I'm too busy. I'm on my phone.
Just this general.
Yeah, I'm abstracting everything, and we're going to get to this when we eventually talk about repair. This notion that in the same way that isolation and disembodiment is such a crucial, repeated element of rupture that is toxic, so will embodiment be a crucial element of repair. I mean, this is what the serpent does in the Garden of Eden, right? He wants to talk about God from a distance. He doesn't want to talk with God when God comes along later in the afternoon to have his daily walk. And we end up doing the same thing. I have a rupture, and instead of going and talking with that person, I want to talk about them with other people who will kind of, maybe help me, provide empathy for me, but also may just help me continue to tell the story the way I want to.
Yeah. And the idea of telling a different story about our story is...
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And the application made me super excited about getting to I think it's the next episode on repair.
We're hoping.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. Dear gracious.
Because it's like thinking about ruptures that happened a long time ago where maybe the people, we're not in relationship with the people. It's like, what do we do with that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to highlight for our listeners here too, just to make sure that I'm clear about this. Because I mentioned quite a bit this notion of what part of the story are we contributing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
My capacity to tell a different story can't happen until I've had the experience of feeling felt. In order for me, even in recovery rooms, Aim, right? There is this sense in which to answer that question, and what role did you play? What's your part?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I can't get to that if I have not yet first felt some sense of empathic connection regarding the part of my story where I truly have been wounded.
Right.
Where I have been run over in the crosswalk. If I'm the pedestrian who stepped into the street, I stepped in the street, I got run over by a drunk driver in a blackout. I can't start to work on being more careful until I get my fractured femur taken care of.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I want us to know that this is a rhythmic dance that we're involved in. That your story matters, and where the ruptures have happened to you, it matters that those stories be heard, and that you have that you have the sense of being hospitably received. In order for us all to then begin to be curious, what can I begin to do about repair?
Yeah.
What repairs are possible? What repairs may not be because of things that I have nothing to do with, because other people aren't able to be part of that repair work. Right. We'll get to some of those questions and reflections as we go forward.
Great.
Which is soon.
Soon.
Yeah.
Soon and very soon.
Right on.
All right. Thanks, you too.
It was great, guys.
All right, everybody. Next time.
Next time.
Love you.
All
right.
Love you guys.